God. We pray with me. Lord, we rush from one place to the next. We cram as much as we can into each minute of every day. Still us, Lord. Help us to take this time to explore what it is that really matters in this journey we call life. May the words of my mouth and our thoughts united as one people in you bring you glory. Amen. So last week we looked at the story of Eutychus, who fell asleep and then fell out of the window he was perched on. We explored some of the reasons that people in churches today spiritually may fall out of church windows. And we also talked about what we're capable of doing for Jesus when the church wakes up to the reality of the pain and the suffering that happens in our communities and beyond. So today I want to add another piece to the conversation. In this life, which is full of ups and downs, twists and turns, we're going to try to answer the question, what really matters? I want you to imagine with me that you're hosting a big family event. It's a special occasion, maybe Easter, maybe Christmas, but you want everything to be absolutely perfect. Now, add to that the guest of honor is Jesus himself. That's the situation Mary is in today's gospel reading. What do we know about these relationships? We know that Martha, Mary, and Lazarus lived together in what we are told was Martha's home. She was most likely the older of the sisters, and perhaps even widowed and had inherited the home that they lived in together. We know that they're friends of Jesus. Scripture tells us that. In John chapter 11, Jesus wept before raising Lazarus from the dead. And in John chapter 12, he tells us that Jesus visited their home before he entered Jerusalem for what would be his journey to the cross. Martha's home is located about 1.5 miles from Jerusalem, which is about a half-hour walk. So that made it very convenient as a place for Jesus to enjoy the hospitality of friends as he was on his way to feast days. Today is one of those visits, and Martha wants everything perfect. In her quest for perfection, Martha's running between the dining room and the kitchen. She is busy, busy, busy. She's laid out the best linens, she's put out the best tableware, she's preparing the finest foods, and her pots begin to boil, and so does she. She glances into the living room, and she sees her sister sitting at the feet of Jesus. She's listening intently, like nothing else is going on in the world. Like there's nothing that needs to be done. Now, can any of us relate to that? Have we ever had an experience where we're working hard, getting ready for a party, or we're at work, and we glance and see someone sitting just doing nothing? Not sharing their part of the workload. Martha, she's beginning to boil over. And she starts slamming those doors and she's slamming those pots. And guess what? No one even seems to notice. So, she goes to Jesus and she says, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. it's interesting. Jesus doesn't condemn Martha. Instead, Jesus says, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. And I'm not going to take that away. Can you just picture it? Jesus' gentle face speaking in tender, loving words. You're worried about many things. Maybe Jesus is telling Martha that worry is a distraction, a burden that we really don't have to carry. Worry saps the energy out of us. And its health consequences are very, very well documented. I suspect some of us would be worrying just like Martha. But there was an interesting study done last year. Participants of the study were asked to record long-term those things that they were worried about. At the same time, they were asked to identify which of those events that they were worried about came to pass. So the results of the study turns out that 85% of what the participants worried about never happened. With the 15% that did happen, 79% of the participants discovered that they could handle whatever it was that was put in their path. And others said it wasn't as bad as they thought it would be. And still others even said that the experience was a positive one. They learned something from it. So that means that 97% of what one worries about doesn't happen or doesn't have the effect that we anticipated. And to me, that seems like a whole lot of wasted worry. On the heels of pointing out Martha's worry, Jesus says, Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. I have a story, I think, that just shows us what we're talking about today. It's from a book that I've read over and over again, and it's called Having a Merry Heart in a Martha World. It was written by Joanna Weaver. It's about a man who one day meets God in this lovely, lovely valley. So they exchange the niceties, and the man says, God, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I can do to help you? So God gives him a task. God says, I have a wagon with 3 stones in it, and I need someone to pull it up the hill for me. God said, are you willing? Well, the man looked at the wagon and he looked at the rocks, and he decided that he could do what God was asking him to do. So God gives him very specific instructions. He draws a map in the dirt. He tells him exactly how to go and where the destination is. And the man sets off. He finds that his work is fairly easy, and he's singing a hymn of praise because he's just filled with joy that he is doing something to help God. So after he walks for a while, he goes through a village where a man stops him and says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm working for the Lord. And the man said, I was just praying that someone would come along to help me. You see, I have this rock which needs to go to the top of the mountain. The man says, I'm going there. Add it to my wagon. Off he goes. Village, village, village. People are adding stuff to his wagon. And it gets to the point where it's not so easy anymore to be pulling that wagon. And he starts to cry out to God. And he says, Lord, the job that you've given me is just too hard. I can't do it. So God walks over to the wagon and he picks up items that have been added as the man traveled village to village. And with each item, God says, what is this? Where did this come from? And the man said, well, people needed help, so I took their items. God unloaded the wagon, and he told the man, if you are content with allowing others to take their own burdens, I will help you with your task. I know that you are trying to help, but when you are weighted down with all these cares, you cannot do what I ask. That was probably a light bulb moment for that man. And that should be a light bulb moment for us. Living room scene. Jesus doesn't condemn Martha, and neither should we. Martha is fulfilling her role that's been dictated to her as a woman during that time. Women were encouraged to show their love for God through good works. But what does Jesus say? Mary chose the better. And that's the tension for us. So many times, it's not a matter of choosing between good and bad. It's a matter between choosing good and better. We fill our plates with such good intentions to the point that we become overextended. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Think about it. Okay, there's a job. No one volunteered. It's got to be done. Somebody has to do it. What's one more thing? So we step up and we take on more. But this is what I've come to learn. When my plate becomes so full that I want to scream at Jesus, no one will help me, then it's time to determine who put that stuff on my plate. Was it really God giving me a task, calling me to do something? Or was it my own humanity who said, yeah, I can do one more thing? So how do we discern what we put there and what Jesus needs us to put there? Paul, in his writing to the people of Philippi, says, this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ. In other words, as we continue to grow in love, in knowledge, and insight, as we continue to join in prayer, As we continue to study the biblical teachings, we will be able to discern what is best. God wants us to choose that which is better among a variety of good choices. So what is that then that won't be taken away from Mary? That won't be taken away from any of us? What are those things that really matter? I was sitting in an office this week waiting for an appointment, and I glanced down and saw a book, 50 Things That Really Matter. Knowing I was preaching this very topic this week, I just knew that was a God moment. So I picked up that book, flipped through, and here's some of the things that they listed as really matters. Wisdom, faith, seashells, naps, the smell of a baby, kindness, quiet time, holding someone's hand, saying I love you, saying I'm sorry, sunrises, hugs, contentment. As I scanned the list, it was impossible not to notice that these were all things deeply centered in emotions. Feelings, touch, expressions of love. I also noticed that cooking and cleaning, although necessary, were not on that list. We know we need to do them, but how does that compare with sitting at the feet, worshiping Jesus? It's not even a close choice. Our own Wayne, and I use this with his permission, captured it so beautifully on Facebook this week. He wrote, "To my lovely wife, when we get to the end of our lives together, the house we had, the cars we drove, the things we possessed won't matter. What will matter is that I had you and you had me." Another post on our Facebook page was written by a friend who's near and dear to me. And she was going about her usual routines, getting Sharon on a day off, when she felt her throat begin to close. As it became more constricted and she was home alone, she called 911. She went to the hospital and ended up on a respirator. Now, although they never were able to determine what caused that event, she was fully recovered and she's back to full life. She says what matters is God and her relationships with people. When we brush away all the stuff, it's love that matters. Maybe today will be the day that we sit at the feet of Jesus and reevaluate our lives. Clearing off those things that in the scheme of life really don't matter. Worry, anger, bitterness, differences of opinion. The list goes on, and each of you could add something to it. I want to make one more point in this story. Sitting at the feet of Jesus was common for being discipled, but it was not common for women. But Jesus, in this story, is saying, my words, my teachings, they're for everyone. Everyone. Mary is in that prime spot. Mary's, as a woman, is being discipled. No one is excluded. Jesus is saying, come, sit with me. What really matters is that the only Jesus some people may ever get to see is us. You cannot show Jesus to other people unless you know Jesus. It's impossible to know Jesus unless you spend time sitting at his feet. But here's the thing. After sitting at his feet, Jesus wants us to get up and go do something. It's about being intentional. It's about finding the balance between Mary's heart and Martha's service. It's about love and service going hand in hand outside the walls of the church. Why? Because the world needs Jesus. And we need to be the people who bring change to the world. That's discipleship. And as you're going about the business of God, may God get the glory. Amen.